Your roadmap to the latest in auto. Welcome to Highway Herald. Fasten your seatbelts. The global trade landscape is shifting fast, and the fallout could hit home hard. Imagine skyrocketing prices on your smartphone, car, and groceries. Or worse, empty shelves. This isn't hypothetical. It's happening now. China, the world's manufacturing giant, is tightening its grip on exports to the US, threatening supply chains and industries. The stakes are high for the US economy, tech, and consumers alike. Buckle up. Here are 7 ways this trade shift could change everything. Way number 7, rare earths crisis, the backbone of modern technology. China's dominance in rare earth minerals gives it significant leverage in global trade. These 17 elements are essential for smartphones, EV batteries, and military systems. By 2025, China is expected to control nearly 90% of the world's refined rare earth output, leaving the US heavily dependent on a single supplier. In December 2023, Beijing banned exports of rare earth magnet technology, critical for EVs and wind turbines. In February 2025, China restricted 5 key metals essential for defense and clean energy, threatening production for companies like Apple and Tesla and causing potential military delays. Australia's Wyloo Metals is developing the Yangibana project to reduce reliance on China, but creating alternative supply chains will take over a decade and cost more than $1 trillion. The key question remains, can the US adapt quickly enough to counter China's dominance? But semiconductors are another battlefield where the US faces mounting pressure from China. Way number 6, Semiconductor Showdown, America's Achilles heel. Semiconductors power everything from smartphones to smart cars and military systems, but the US produces only 12% of the world's supply, while China controls over 50% of the global market. To address this vulnerability, the US passed the $52 billion CHIPS Act to boost domestic production. However, McKinsey & Company estimates that achieving semiconductor independence would take at least 15 years and massive investment. Meanwhile, China is tightening its grip. It imposed export controls on key materials like gallium and germanium, essential for electronics and automotive production, disrupting global supply chains. China is also investing heavily in third-generation semiconductors and securing ties with emerging markets to strengthen its supply chain dominance. The key question remains, can the US close the gap, or will China's technological edge leave American industries trailing behind? But rising production costs are not the only concern. American consumers are already feeling the pinch at the checkout. Way number 5, consumer crisis. Higher prices, fewer options. Most electronics, appliances, and furniture in American homes are labeled Made in China. Over 70% of electronics sold in the US are manufactured in China, according to the Consumer Technology Association. Trade tensions are already pushing prices higher. The Wall Street Journal reports that electronics costs have risen by 15% due to tariffs and supply chain issues. If China imposes further export restrictions, prices could increase even more. The Peterson Institute for International Economics estimates that ongoing trade disruptions could cost the average American family an extra $22,000 annually. It's not just electronics. The fashion industry is also feeling the strain. Chinese retailers like Shein and Temu are undercutting American brands, forcing names like Forever 21 and Billabong to struggle. The big question is, will American consumers adjust, or will leaders be forced to rethink trade strategy? Before we delve deeper, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to Highway Herald. Your support fuels our passion to create more content like this. Now let's explore how China's growing trade alliances are reshaping the global order. Way number 4, China's strategic pivot, the rise of BRICS. As tensions with the US rise, China is strengthening its trade alliances, particularly with BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa. Trade between China and BRICS countries surged by 30% in 2023, reflecting a shift away from Western markets. China's Belt and Road Initiative is central to this strategy, a massive infrastructure project expanding China's influence across Asia, Africa, and Latin America to create an alternative trade network that bypasses Western financial systems. India recently started trading with Russia in rupees instead of dollars, weakening the dollar's global dominance. Similarly, ASEAN nations are developing payment systems to reduce reliance on the dollar. If China establishes this parallel system, the US could lose its financial edge. The key question is, can America adapt to this changing global order, or will China's influence grow unchecked? But currency dominance isn't the only thing at stake. The future of the US dollar itself is under threat. Way number 3, the dollar dilemma, a shifting global currency order. The US dollar has long dominated global trade, but its dominance is fading. In 1999, the dollar accounted for 71% of global reserves. By 2023, it had dropped to 58%. If this trend continues, the dollar's share could fall below 50% by 2034, with major global consequences. China and its trade partners are reducing reliance on the dollar. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are working toward a BRICS-backed reserve currency to challenge US financial dominance. India has already begun trading with Russia in rupees, bypassing the dollar. A weaker dollar could trigger runaway inflation and financial instability in the US. Economist Eswar Prasad warns that reduced dollar use could weaken US sanctions, limiting America's leverage in global markets and shifting the balance of global economic power. And yet, despite mounting tensions, the US and China remain deeply connected. Way number 2, the US-China trade paradox, a complex codependency. Despite rising tensions, the US and China's economies remain closely linked. In early 2025, President Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports over fentanyl concerns. China quickly responded with tariffs on US goods. Despite trade barriers, economic ties remain strong. In 2023, US agricultural exports to China, particularly soybeans and wheat, rose by 25%, showing China's ongoing reliance on American food production. If the US pushes too hard, it could backfire, similar to tariffs on Japan in the 1980s that helped Toyota and Honda rise to dominance. A similar outcome could drive China to strengthen its supply chains and gain a competitive edge. Finally, let's examine the most dangerous front in this economic battle: technology. Way number 1, China's quantum leap, the next technological superpower. The tech race between the US and China is about more than economics. It's about global dominance. Under President Xi Jinping's directive, Chinese tech giants like Huawei, Tencent, and Alibaba have made major strides in AI, 6G networks, and quantum computing. China is setting the pace in AI fields such as facial recognition, autonomous driving, and smart infrastructure. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace warns that US tariffs could push China to accelerate domestic innovation, potentially surpassing the US in key technologies within a decade. The fight for tech supremacy will shape global influence. Can the US maintain its edge, or will China take the lead? The road ahead. Can the US reclaim its trade dominance? The global trade landscape is shifting fast, and China is driving the change. Through strategic trade alliances, rare earth dominance, and technological advances, China is positioning itself to challenge US economic leadership. For the US, this is more than a financial issue. It's a strategic turning point. Policymakers must consider reshoring manufacturing, strengthening domestic industries, and expanding research incentives to stay competitive. History shows that competition fuels innovation. From Japan's automotive rise to Silicon Valley's dominance, the US has faced similar challenges before. The question is, can America turn this pressure into a new era of global leadership? What's your take on this trade shift? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Highway Herald. Thanks for watching and see you next time.